Welcome, brave souls. Tonight, you will witness the haunting tale of Father Callahan, a man who faced the darkest forces hidden within the shadows of an ancient church. As the cursed whispers grow louder, his fate hangs in the balance. Dare you to watch until the end and face the terror that awaits?
The ancient church stood silent, shadows whispering secrets. Father Callahan's eyes met mine, their once warm glow now replaced by a cold, distant darkness. A chill ran down my spine. Something was dreadfully wrong. The air felt heavy, as if unseen eyes watched every step I took. His study was dimly lit, candles flickering despite the absence of wind. "Evil lurks close," he murmured, fingers drumming an unsettling rhythm on the table. His voice, usually strong, now trembled with fear. The temperature dropped and a sense of dread filled the room. He recounted his nightmares, dark figures whispering his name, unseen hands gripping his soul. He believed an ancient demon had claimed him, its influence growing stronger each night. His eyes pleaded for help, but beneath that, there was a terror he couldn't hide. We started the exorcism, chanting prayers as the air grew colder. His eyes rolled back and his body shook violently. My breath became visible in the frigid air, and a sense of doom gripped me. The room's shadows danced unnaturally, as if alive, feeding off his suffering. Suddenly he screamed, a sound so primal it felt inhuman. His body twisted, bones cracking, veins turning black as ink. The transformation was horrifying. I watched, frozen, as something ancient and evil took hold of him, pushing Father Callahan further into darkness. He laughed, but it wasn't his voice. The deep, guttural growl echoed through the stone walls. "You're too late," the entity taunted, his eyes void of any humanity. The air thickened, the walls seemed to close in, and a cold shiver ran down my spine as the shadows deepened. The candles extinguished, plunging the room into darkness. Only the sound of his ragged breathing remained. I clutched my crucifix, feeling the weight of the battle ahead. The darkness whispered my name, and I knew saving him would cost more than just prayers. Father Callahan's skin paled, eyes sunken. The demon's grip tightened, turning him into a shadow of the man he once was. The church itself seemed alive. Whispers echoed, and shadows shifted on their own, as if the entire place had been cursed by his presence. Every day he grew weaker, yet the darkness grew stronger. The atmosphere thickened with malice. Even the other priests refused to enter, muttering that his soul was beyond salvation. "He's damned," they whispered, fear in their eyes as they backed away from me. I scoured ancient texts, desperate for a solution. One ritual promised hope, but at a terrible cost. Only one of us could leave the church alive. I knew the stakes, but I couldn't abandon him. His life, his soul, felt intertwined with the fate of this place. I confronted him again, my heart pounding. His voice was now a chorus of screams and mocking laughter. He taunted me, eyes burning with an unholy fire, challenging my faith. Every word felt like a dagger, each accusation deepening the rift between hope and despair. With shaking hands I prepared the ritual, marking symbols of protection. He thrashed, eyes glowing with rage. As I chanted, the room shook, shadows clawing at the walls, their faces twisted in agony. The air crackled with dark energy, pulling at my resolve. The demon's voice roared, mocking my prayers. The church trembled, and I felt its presence tightening around my soul. The room grew colder, the symbols burned bright, and Father Callahan's screams filled the air, a horrifying blend of man and beast. He lunged at me, the shadows dragging at my feet. The force was immense, pulling me into the darkness. I held my ground, shouting the final incantation. The room filled with light, but I knew that only one of us would survive this final confrontation. The ritual's power surged, and Father Callahan hovered above the floor, body contorting as the demon fought to stay. The light illuminated his face, twisted in agony, caught between two worlds. His scream was both his and something far more monstrous. The demon's voice taunted me, mocking my sins, my doubts. It whispered every fear I'd ever had, trying to break my resolve. I pushed on, chanting louder despite the overwhelming darkness pressing down on me. The church felt like a tomb ready to swallow us. Sweat dripped down my brow. I steadied myself, but his face twisted with pain, the man I knew flickering beneath the horror. "Help me," he whispered, a brief moment of clarity, before the demon's laughter returned, cold and cruel, extinguishing all hope. The room darkened, shadows pulling closer. The walls seemed to pulse with life, closing in as the demon fought back. I felt its icy grip around my mind, pressing me to give in. But I refused, clinging to the belief that I could save him, no matter the cost. My voice echoed through the church, prayers pushing back the darkness. Father Callahan's body convulsed, his eyes flashing between man and monster. The ground trembled, and I felt the presence trying to tear us both apart, feeding on our desperation. A final cry pierced the air, and light filled the room. Father Callahan collapsed to the floor, and I approached cautiously. The silence was heavy, filled with dread. I knelt beside him, hoping the ritual had worked, but the darkness still loomed, whispering. He opened his eyes, but they weren't his anymore. A cold grin spread across his face. "You failed," the demon hissed. Shadows swirled, pulling me into the abyss. The church became my prison, and my screams echoed as darkness claimed me too. Father Callahan lay motionless, his face pale. The air felt wrong, cold, unnatural. The shadows around us writhed, whispering dark secrets. The ritual seemed to fail. The church's grip tightened as if it had become a prison for our souls. I tried to stand, but his hand shot out, gripping my arm with unnatural strength. "It's not over," he hissed, his voice a mix of his own and the demon's. My heart pounded as I stumbled back, realizing I was still trapped in this cursed place. His eyes glowed with an unholy light. "You thought you could save me?" He laughed, the demon's voice merging fully with his. "This is only the beginning." The church walls seemed to close in and the shadows loomed, their faces twisted with malevolence. Desperation took over, and I tried to flee, but the heavy doors slammed shut, trapping me inside. The shadows wrapped around me, their touch cold and suffocating. The church itself had become a living, breathing entity, hungry for my soul. Father Callahan's grin widened as he lunged at me, his hands claw-like. We fought, the shadows closing in. I shouted prayers, but the darkness seemed to grow stronger with each word. My strength waned as I felt the church draining my life force. Pinned to the floor, I grabbed my crucifix, pressing it against his chest. For a moment, he shrieked in agony, and light filled the room. The shadows recoiled, but the victory was short-lived. The light faded, and his eyes, filled with darkness, stared into mine. He whispered, "This place is ours now." The shadows swallowed me, pulling me into the floor. My screams echoed as the church consumed me. Father Callahan stood victorious, a puppet of the darkness, as the building sealed its fate with ours. With my last strength I stood, surrounded by the living shadows. The walls pulsed with dark energy, and faces emerged, sneering. Father Callahan circled me, his eyes burning. "Your faith is nothing," he taunted. The air grew colder, the church tightening its hold. His voice, now fully demonic, echoed through the halls. "Your God has abandoned you." The words clawed at my resolve, but I pushed back, reciting the final prayer. The shadows recoiled, but their whispers intensified, filling my mind with doubt. I began the last incantation, each word vibrating through the church. The walls trembled and Father Callahan's body contorted, struggling against the light. For a brief moment I saw his eyes flicker with humanity, but the demon's grip remained strong. He charged, and I raised my crucifix. A burst of light filled the room as we collided. His screams echoed, both human and monstrous. For a moment I felt the demon's hold weaken and hope surged. But the light was fading, and shadows closed in. I felt the darkness grip my soul, dragging me down. Father Callahan's face twisted in pain, but his eyes met mine, a flicker of the man I once knew. "Fight it!" I shouted, but his scream pierced the air, blending rage and sorrow. The church trembled violently, In one last effort, I pressed the crucifix to his forehead. Light burst out, and the shadows recoiled. His body convulsed, and for a moment I thought we had won. But then the light faded completely, and the church walls darkened, sealing us in eternal night. Father Callahan's eyes turned completely black as he whispered, "You lost." The shadows pulled me under, my cries echoing through the empty halls. The church, now a tomb, claimed us both, a testament to a battle lost and the darkness that prevailed.
The story may have ended, but nightmares have a way of clinging to you, following you into the dark. Tonight, when the shadows lengthen and you feel that creeping dread, remember, some nightmares don't end when you wake up. If this story left you uneasy and you crave more terror, hit the like and subscribe button. The real nightmare is only just beginning.